Alright, this is going to be a response to Roy Dower. I think that's his name. I could be wrong. Sorry. First, I want to emphasize that everything in the Bible is about context. If you don't read it in context, you can pull any verse out you want and say that, oh, well, he says this right here. Well, that goes against everything. Or you could say that, you could pretty much say anything you want. It's just like if I read a letter and you take one little phrase out of that letter and say, well, this letter is actually this and it's not this. Well, you have to read the rest of that letter. You can't take that one little phrase and say that that's actually what it means. Your first point, working on the Sabbath. You quoted Mark 2:23 through, I think it was 24. Now, if you would have read the rest of that, which is 25 through 28, he talks about how David ate the shewbread when he had nothing to eat. And then he says in verse 27 and 28, "And he said unto them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath." Luke 13:15 and 16. "The Lord then answered him and said, Thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or his ass from the stall, and lead him away to watering?" 16. "And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day?" Now this is talking about healing on the Sabbath day and forgiving of sins on the Sabbath day. Matthew 12:10 through 12. "And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? And that they might accuse him. And he said unto them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep, whereof it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days?" That answers your first point about Sabbath days. Like I said, you have to take it in context. He was not working on the Sabbath days. He was healing, and he was forgiving sins on the Sabbath days. Your second point, which was stealing. First you talk about in Mark, where they were plucking ears of corn. Then you talk about the donkey, or the colt. First, let me read in Leviticus 19:9 and 10. "And when you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord your God." So, the leftovers of the harvest were to be left for the poor and the strangers. There's another verse that talks about not picking over the harvest twice. Now, you talk about the donkey. You talk about them loosing the donkey, or the colt, however you want to say it. Luke 19:33. "And as they were loosing the colt, the owners thereof said unto them, Why loose ye the colt? And they said, The Lord hath need of him." Now, the owners were present at the time of the loosing of this colt. If it would have been stealing, for one, they would have said that it was stealing. The owners would have. There would have been, they would have went to someone, possibly even the Pharisees, and told him that, hey, or told them that, hey, they stole my colt. Now, there was none of that. Now, did he give the colt back? I don't know. It doesn't make a point to say that. But it does make a point to say that the owners were there. I also want to point out that the Pharisees were trying everything that they could to convict Jesus of anything. Now, if there would have been any implication of stealing, they would have brought that up. There was no implications of stealing. Your third point is about the word hate, which is missio. Now, I have Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible. The number for it is 3404. That's the number for the word that is used in that sentence. It is missio. However, another definition of it is to love less. Now, this was copyrighted in 1890, so this has been around for a while. I know that you got your information from Rook, and I'm sorry about that, but that is wrong. It also does mean to love less. Now, your second question would be, well, okay, how do we know that it means to love less in that scripture, in that context? Well, good question. Let's point out the verse that you talked about, which is Matthew 10:35 through 36. Now, if you would have read one more scripture down, which is 37, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So it is in comparison to. It does mean to love less. That is another definition of the word missio. Now, your last point is that he said, ask anything in his name, and he will do it. Now, James 1:6-7 says, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. James 4:3. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. So the first point is that you have to have faith. That if you're not asking in faith, you will not receive anything. The second point is that if it does not line up with God's will, and it is simply for your own lusts, that you will not receive it. So, hopefully this answered all your questions, and I'm hoping that you weren't trying to be intentionally deceitful. I know that sometimes Rook is being intentionally deceitful, and I hope that you simply just got all this from him or from another source, and that you didn't actually read into it. Because if you did read into it, you would be able to come up with these answers on your own. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. And if any Christians have any points to add or correct me in any way, please feel free to do so.